Last week, I was part of a small group of people that visited Valve on behalf of the TF2 community to deliver the names of the 340,000 plus people who signed the Fix TF2 petition to rid the game of cheating bots. This moment has been the culmination of the entire Fix TF2 campaign, and now that's kind of a wrap on the movement. I believe it's fair to say that TF2 is kind of in the best state it's ever been in a very long time. The bots are gone, the game is still getting new content and quality of life updates, and the 7th comic that will wrap up the TF2 storyline and give the game some closure is finally in the works. And while I can't claim to know much, I'm certain that Fix TF2 was at least a factor in TF2 receiving a bit more care lately. Certainly more care than Counter-Strike 2 of all games. Geez, if you think TF2 is having a content dry spell, take a look at CS2 patch notes. Okay, I'll start by addressing the big elephant in the room. I bet some of you have a death grip on your RGB gamer chairs wondering how things went at Valve. So before the rumor mill gets cranking too hard, let me address some common misconceptions people have had about the Valve trip. First off, Valve let us into their offices. You need clearance from an employee to even get into the building, and we did not show up uninvited. The entire exchange was also completely respectful. So no, we weren't acting like obnoxious nerds begging at the door to be let in. 2, Valve accepted the book graciously, and we were told by someone they'd even like to display it on their desk. So y'all can have fun with your toilet paper jokes, but I'm pretty damn certain it's not immediately getting slam dunked into the shredder. 3, the movement was always completely about the bot issue, and that remained true even at Valve HQ. Anyone who's trying to twist this story as us visiting Valve to beg for the heavy update or new content is either severely misinformed or maliciously twisting the truth. So yes, we were invited by an actual Valve developer to talk about the bots and hand over the book. And while I won't reveal who it was for anonymity's sake, or everything we talked about out of the kindness for the person we talked to, what I will say is that things are looking good, and I don't foresee bots becoming a problem to the extent they were for a very long while. And to that end, Fix TF2 was successful. And let me tell you, it was not an easy journey getting to that spot. It all started earlier this year. People have been talking about doing a Save TF2 revival for months at this point, but I think the moment that really galvanized me into joining, really kicked me into action, was seeing what the bot hosters were doing to Mega Scatterbomb, using AI impersonations to defame him while abusing chat to spread personal information. I remember just feeling enraged at this. In my eyes, I saw a group of malicious, evil people doing terrible things and an apathetic multi-billion-dollar company letting it happen. It felt like a real case of injustice harming a community and a game I cared about, and I wanted to do something to help out. So I joined a group of other content creators to start planning what would become Fix TF2. Going into it, I personally had 3 main goals. The first was to be an improvement on Save TF2 that we did 2 years prior. I made a whole video explaining that, going through my thought process way back when this first started. The second thing I wanted to do was expose the bot hosters for who they really were. And between the document, the website, and my video on the topic, the news spread far, and before I knew it, I was seeing news articles being interviewed and being referenced by massive YouTubers. And that third goal was to try and get something done about the bots. That third one was always a long shot, and I considered it a pipe dream, but I wanted to go about things in a way that I hypothesized would have the best odds of getting something done. I knew that as a community, we can only get together and make a big push like this so many times before it starts to become a boy cried wolf scenario and the larger gaming community ignores us. So I always kind of figured that Fix TF2 was kind of our last shot, a Hail Mary play to try and fix the bots one last time. And even going into it, I kind of knew how it was going to go. You can't please everybody, and there was going to be a lot of backlash no matter what we did or how much it worked. But I felt like I even had some sort of moral obligation to do something about the hosters, a final act of goodwill for the TF2 community before leaving and broadening my horizons. So that's what I helped the others to do. As a group, we created a really cool website that acts as a love letter to those old TF2 update pages. We created videos to spread awareness about the bot problem, and we created a petition for the purpose of getting as many eyes as possible. Sure, there were some early complications like Google blocking petition signers, but that got worked out pretty quickly, and I mean, come on, is it even a launch these days if there's not server issues? So, the signers were coming in droves. We were once again seeing news reports, trending hashtags, Reddit posts, videos. Things were going well. But as time kept chugging, things started to add up. The first big hiccup was when we received a DMCA notice from someone claiming to be a lawyer from Valve. The DMCA told us to either take down the website or remove all TF2 imagery from the site. We looked at the name of the lawyer that sent the notice, and sure enough, it was the name of someone who worked for Valve. So obviously this was a massive problem I had to stay on top of. But I found this news out right before going to bed. So here's what I did that night. I set a timer for 2 hours. I'd go to bed for 2 hours, wake up, and check in on how things were going. Then I'd go back to sleep, wake up 2 hours later to record a video about the DMCA, and then I'd go back to bed, so on and so forth every 2 hours. And looking back, this was really unhealthy, and I probably should have just gotten a full night's rest. But the end result of that takedown was that it turned out it was completely fake and fraudulent. People tried to troll us a couple times after that, but by then we had caught on to their tricks. There was also the worry of me being personally attacked by the bots. This is a group of malicious people that dox and harass people for fun, and I had just kind of kicked the hornet's nest by exposing their actions to hundreds of thousands of people. So for weeks during the movement, there was always that lingering thought in the back of my mind of, is today the day I get swatted and there's police at my door? Or is today the day the hosters try to defame me and slander me with fake evidence? It was this non-stop lingering thought in my mind that thankfully never came to fruition. I never received any harassment from hosters outside of stream sniping, and allegedly I've heard they used an AI recreation of my voice in game, but I never saw it for myself. And even if nothing came of it, it was just another thing for me to worry about and keep me up at night. Then there was the non-stop debates and backlash regarding the movement. I had prepared myself for it mentally, but after rallying up hundreds of thousands of angry people, the last thing I was expecting was for those same angry people to turn on myself. It felt as though every announcement, every decision we made, everything we said publicly was placed under a microscope and scrutinized. After a while, it felt like you just couldn't win. So you try to make concessions, try to appease that rabid crowd. I remember there was a very vocal group of people who said the movement should be driven by the community and shouldn't be controlled by big leaders like me. So I took a backseat for a while and let the community kind of do their own thing with the movement. But then the TF2 subreddit started doing this thing where they draw porn of a bot hoster, and suddenly everyone's talking about how it's the organizers' fault because they gave them no directions on what to do, and like, what the hell am I supposed to say? Stop drawing porn? I never gave that the green light. That wasn't my idea. I thought it was stupid too, but now if I come out to the public and I say, hey, stop doing that, it's stupid, people are going to complain about how I'm controlling the movement like a twisted puppet master, or that I should have condemned it from the beginning. And it's this big web of trying to please as many people as possible, and you just get tangled up in the web and you feel strangled. You can't please everybody, but after a while, it starts to feel like you can't please anybody. I remember once being told that stress is like having a glass jar, and every time something makes you feel stressed or anxious, you put a little pebble into the jar. But it's just a pebble. You can manage one pebble. The jar is still intact. But over time, as more and more things stress you out, you start to put more and more pebbles into that jar, and eventually the pressure is too much and the jar just cracks and shatters. And I think that moment for me, that proverbial last pebble in the jar, happened when it was discovered that someone had been impersonating me in casual lobbies to spread illegal exploitative material. And that night when I found that out, I just remember feeling violently ill and unwell. and I just couldn't get a lick of sleep that night. After all the time, hundreds of dollars, and faith I had put into this project, it had just become a bit too much. The stress of it all, the anxiety, the dread, the backlash, it had all just become a bit much. As I understand it, one of the biggest gripes people had with Fix TF2 was the lack of communication from people such as myself. And while I can't speak for everyone attached to the movement, I do apologize for my part in the lack of communication. I just felt as though I had been put in this situation where I couldn't win no matter what I did. So I just hunkered down and only made announcements when I was absolutely 100% confident in them. And I say all of this not to throw a pity party, oh boo-hoo, the what? You know, because that's not the goal. I'm feeling way better now, and I'll get to that. I just want to give you perspective after the fact, just to explain why I wasn't there engaging with the community when I should have. And it was during this time, when my motivation stagnated, that I felt like I saw a very bitter part of the community. I felt like every time I checked into the TF2 community, I just saw people spewing bile out of their mouths. Like people saying shit about how all of TF2's voice actors are just grifters who engage with the TF2 community for clout, or how the Fix TF2 movement was some sort of inside job for money and fame. And newsflash, buddy, there are at least 20 grifts more easy and more profitable than this. If all I really cared about was money and fame, I'd be talking about the huge blank drama of the week or whatever the hell it is that Sneeko does. And over time, I feel like I kind of let myself get absorbed into that bitterness, that incessant negativity, that cynicism. I have this metaphor I like to use. It's like walking up to a machine and it's labeled the face punching machine. And you think to yourself, man, I wonder what the hell this thing does. So you put it in a corner, you turn the knob, and then you get punched in the face. That's kind of how it felt to engage with the community during that period. It felt like putting a quarter into the face punching machine and wondering why the hell you got punched in the face. After taking so many punches to the face, I had just become kind of fed up and bitter. I lost my sight of why I was even doing Fix TF2. This thing that I had started as a love letter for the community had morphed into a chore I only engaged with out of obligation. I remember wanting to announce how I wanted to leave the TF2 community and move on so I could just be done with it. And the final hurdle separating me from that goal was getting the petition to Valve. So over time, we closed the petition, looked over the signers, created the book, had it shipped to my house, and about a week ago, the time finally came to go to Washington to visit Valve. So my friends Shork, Oris, and myself took a plane flight to go to Seattle. I could finally be over and done with the TF2 community. For months before we took the trip, we had been trying to establish a line of contact with Valve, but up until then, we had yet to receive a response. Things were starting to look concerning. But in between that, I got to spend time with the voice actors. I spent time with Gary Schwartz, Ellen McLean, and John Patrick Lowry. And during that time, we got to talk about Team Fortress, their careers, their lives, and during this time I spent with them, I just remember thinking, oh my god, these are some of the most passionate people for their professions I've ever seen. They're caring, they're kind, and they love what they do. So what am I doing? Being such a negative Nancy all the time? Why am I allowing myself to get so bitter and unmotivated over this Fix TF2 thing? And over those few days in Washington, I focused my vision and I remembered why I was even doing this. Because I really care about TF2 and the community, and I wanted to go out on a limb for something I really care about. It was the TF2 community that had gotten me this far, and I owed it to them to see this thing through no matter how it was received. And it was at that moment, we received a text from one of our contacts inviting us to go inside of Valve HQ. And we were going to go tomorrow. One problem, the time we agreed to come was just a short while after my plane would depart. And maybe before I would have just handed off that book to my friends and gotten on that plane and went home to be done with it. But now, I had my vision back and my eyes were on the prize. I was going to fulfill this promise I made and get that book to Valve in person. So that night, I made the decision to postpone my flight by just a couple of hours. And just getting a flight that was a couple hours later ended up costing like $320. And not just that, I needed a place to stay for the night, so I also reserved a motel room for even more money. It was stupidly expensive, but I had to see this thing through. And the next day, we met the Valve employee, dropped off that book, and completed Fix TF2. We were even given a tour of the offices, something I think my 15-year-old self would have killed for. And after Valve, it was time to take the plane back home. From there, I was going to spend the night in a motel, eat some of that sloppy motel breakfast that just hits different on trips, and take a bus back home in the morning. But when I got off that plane at midnight, I checked my phone and realized the motel I reserved had canceled on me, and the first bus out wasn't going to be for 7 hours. So I had no choice but to sit in the airport lobby and wait from midnight to 7 a.m. to take a multi-hour bus ride back home without falling asleep. Under normal circumstances, I think most people would have just gone insane on the spot, but I didn't even really mind, because I just sat down in a chair in that lobby and started looking at all the replies to my book tweet and just seeing how many of you were so happy to see that your name was inside Valve HQ. Over the course of that night in the airport lobby, this massive weight I had put on my chest was pulled off, and for the first time in months, I felt as if it had all been worth it. The countless hours of my time, the sleepless nights, the thousands of dollars I don't even want to think about that I spent on the project. It was all worth it to sit in that chair and see you all happy you took a chance on something you cared about just as much as I do. Now, of course, the book has gotten its fair share of ridicule. It seems like a majority of the discourse surrounding it is whether or not it's gonna touch Gabe's chocolate starfish or not, but that doesn't bother me anymore. And if you care about TF2, I don't think it should bother you either. Now, we can all take a deep breath, boot up casual mode, and play the game without bots for the first time in 6 years in peace. And that's all we wanted. I'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helped with Fix TF2, including Wheezy, Shork, Oris TV, Mega Scatterbomb and Spiky Mikey for being interviews in my bot expose, Moonly Days and Chedsy who did an amazing job with the website, Pybun and Jaunty Web who did artwork for this site, Shab or Zob who reported on Fix TF2 nearly every day for months, you absolute madman. On that note, everyone who made videos regarding Fix TF2, and of course, every one of you who signed the petition, because truly, every sign mattered. Except for you, Donnie, and you, Joshua Martin. Yeah, you know who you are. In the end, I was only a small cog in the machine that allowed Fix TF2 to grow as much as it did. And without the help of everyone who supported it, this could have never been accomplished. So, thank you. Okay, bye!